We are joined now by the chair of the council, FCPA Ahmed Abdullahi, who is also the governor for Wajir County. Good morning, Governor.
Good morning, Eric.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Karibu Sana, this is where we fix the nation, one conversation at a time.
Nice
Even fixing devolution.
Thank you.
And making sure that money flows where it should flow, and it does what it should do. Starting from that conversation yesterday, which we'll be talking about shortly, plus also looking at others in terms of how much money you need to go into counties going forward, how much money you can account for as governors that has been spent so far. 12 years of devolution, can we feel the effect of that? Plus many others. But first, this girl, we call her Jano. She's called Jano Amaquotes. Every day she has a very beautiful quote from somebody who said something.
And every week I'll do one on discipline. Eliud Kipchoge, back in 2019, in his speech said, "Only the disciplined ones are free in life." The longer version of it is, if you're undisciplined, you are a slave to your moods and your passions. What do you make of that?
I think that's very apt, because discipline is what we lack in this country. I think our problem is discipline. Really, at every level. So if we can fix our discipline issues, our problems will disappear.
Fix discipline, fix the nation.
Fix the nation.
When you say discipline, you know, as a politician, we are seeing those in government mentioning discipline, but in another light, saying that we are indisciplined, our children are indisciplined, that's why they are speaking like this, they're insulting their leaders, saying we have lack of order because of indiscipline. Is that what you mean, or what kind of discipline do you mean? I
mean discipline in every which sense, from the leaders, from the led, you know, as a nation. I think it's, we're getting a bit too noisy. There's very little focus on work. And we're politicking from one election day to the next election day, creating crises everywhere, creating perception issues. I'm pretty much a finance person. Markets are driven by perception. To fix the economy, we need to fix perception. And we can't fix perception when the only thing that comes out of Kenya is noises and political fights and insults every single day. So then discipline is across the board. I think we just need to get back to the basics with respect to the rule of law and reflect as a people. That's my personal view. Yeah.
You're the chair of the Council of Governors. I'm trying to see how you reconcile holding that position and trying to inculcate that same culture of discipline with the other governors. Is it something you struggle with? Do you feel like even in the docket where you are, it's an issue, and how do you reconcile that?
The chair of council is not a prefect of other governors.
No, of course.
It's just the first among equals.
Yes.
But I'm just saying we all need to reflect on that and work more, talk less. So I try to do that at my personal level and only talk when I need to. Yeah.
We've got a lot to get through.
Right.
But county, when you say county cash, a lot of Kenyans have an understanding that, you know what, counties are meant to be allocated a given amount of money every year. They don't know how much is constitutionally allocated and how much counties get over the last few years especially. Just give us an overview of what the Constitution mandates for and how much counties have been getting in allocation.
Miriam, there is there's no figure that I can pick and say counties ought to get this much. In any given year. It's got to be on the basis of what is shareable that particular year. And this is a debate that will always be with us. It's normal, first of all, for subnationals and the center to quarrel over money. Everywhere where there is subnational government, or more than one level of government, it is normal. The US has had states for well over 200 years, but they're always quarreling over functions and resources. But the main principle, really, constitutional principle, is that functions and resources should go together. Resources should follow functions. And I think that's where we have the challenge in this country, because you see, we try to dismantle a powerful center, right? And spread resources and power. It's not the subnationals that came together to form a central government. It's a very powerful central government that Kenyans fought to dismantle, in the sense of distributing a bit of that power and sharing it with the counties at a subnational level. So the center is fighting back. The bureaucracy at the national level will fight back. And, you know, so it's a question of resistance to change. So why do I say this? Because if all the resources relating to all the functions that have been devolved were costed properly and bundled, that's the language they usually use, and given to the counties, then counties will not be quarreling over resources. This last week, you've heard my party leader, Baba, talk about roads and roads money and Kura and Kera, and whether they are really required given the new constitutional dispensation. So I think when we gave ourselves the new constitution, we should have looked at every aspect of our administrative structures and aligned those with the constitution. That hasn't happened. And as a result, a lot of money that ought to flow to the counties is still being held in government, national government, ministries, departments, and agencies. And this is the crux of the matter.
So it's been, there's also been, I believe it was still Baba at some point, saying that national government sometimes undermines devolution. He said that, I think, in November 2023. It's been criticized for saying government is undermining the spirit of devolution. And you're saying at the crux of the matter is that some of the finances are being held there. So how do we break through that, and what are your ideas around that?
So that undermining has got to do with what I call the resistance, right, to change, because we have not fully complied with the Constitution. And it's systemic in a sense, in that the bureaucracy at the center still believes it's existential for them to continue doing what counties ought to be doing. If everything counties are supposed to do is given to them and the resources are transferred, then there's fear that the center will lose relevance. Right? Look at health, for instance, water, agriculture, livestock. These are services that really matter to the average Kenyan. You know, this is where the rubber really meets the road. If you now then say that national government will not be actively involved in the implementation of these programs, because they ought not to be, really, because the only role they have in there is policy. Implementation belongs to the county, right? So things like distribution of fertilizers and you know, interfering with extension services, primary health care at the very basic level, all national government ought to do, really, if we're to strictly follow the letter and the spirit of the Constitution, is to set policies. But the actual work only ought to be done by the counties. Just the same way that we do no work with respect to foreign affairs, with respect to operational matters in security, in defense, and the like, which are, you know, national functions. So, but given our setup, our political structure, our need to face the public from election day to election day, what will the national government be telling the public if they don't try to claw back? So then that is the crux of the matter.
But some would say
we can have all these other arguments. Will the Kenyan public reward a national government and re-elect it for setting good policies?
It's a great question.
But beyond policy, there's a lot of work that the national government has, including security. The fourth schedule of our constitution, you know, we wrote and gave ourselves a constitution and promulgated it 15 years ago. And the fourth schedule of it, and this is it, it's actually, we're going to put it on the screen. It talks about distribution of functions between the national government and the county governments. The national government functions are many, 1 up to 20, 35, including tourism, national betting, capacity, public investment, and so on and so forth. County functions, agriculture, county health services, including county health facilities, ambulance services, promotion of primary health care, licensing and control of undertakings that sell food, veterinary services, cemeteries, refuse removal, control of air pollution. Then we have cultural activities like betting, casinos, county transport, including county roads, street lighting, traffic and parking, public road transport, ferries and harbors, animal control, including licensing of dogs, facilities for the accommodation, care and burial of animals, trade development, including markets. Can I repeat? Trade developments and regulation, including markets, trade licenses, fair trading practices, local tourism, cooperative societies, county planning, pre-primary education, implementation of specific national government functions. All these 14 functions are devolved.
Yes.
We still, Governor, 13 years since the first, 12 years since the first county government was established. Okay, no, 15 years of our constitution. We're still talking about unbundling these things, and we are still seeing the national government building markets. Let's just start with that basic one. Why is the national government building markets?
And we ask the same question. But if you look at all those functions, those 14 functions, as I said, they are critical functions. And they are public-facing functions. They need you to be at the ground.
With a Watu.
With a Watu. And that ought to be the case, you know, that those functions that are public-facing, because the county government is the lower level of government. It's the one that ought to be nearer to the people. So if you have a, veterinary issue, you can come to Kilimo House, right?
Yeah. You deal with your vet locally.
Right? Locally. If you have a flu, we can't all come to Kenyatta.
But Governor, that is why we gave ourselves this constitution and said, these things that are local shall be handled by the government that is closer to the people at the local level. So back to the question, why is the national government building markets?
I think that's a question they should put to the national government, because the constitution is in black and white. But if you ask me, should I put that off? It's again got to do with these functions that we're doing being deemed existential. I repeat, with respect to relevance. So, Eric, I might be a bit philosophical with these things, but you tell me, what will happen if, let's take CDF for instance. For example, CDF was necessary before devolution because it was an attempt to devolve resources from the center and bring some equity in the distribution of resources. But with counties, that's already been done through devolution. But we have left it intact, probably even expanded it, scattered around the legal issues, facing it. The courts have pronounced themselves on CDF on many occasions. They've said it is ultra-vires the Constitution, it's unconstitutional, right? But you go scrap CDF today.
Yeah.
You'll fight me.
It's okay. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. The national government will try and throw a fit and those at the center will try and throw a fit.
Yes.
But that's why we put it in the constitution and even included a schedule for avoidance of doubt. This is the division of the functions. We even come and say health services, county health services, including a promotion of healthcare, county health facilities and pharmacies and all.
Understand.
You had a meeting yesterday with the Minister for Health.
Yes.
And you're even saying, Asante Sana, at least we have now a minister, let this minister stay here. You know, let's talk about how the money shall be coming to the counties. Why are governors begging for a job that has been given to them by the Constitution?
No, I think that's in a different context. You see, there is a serious also policy changes in the way we handle our healthcare that we are going through now. We're changing our insurance system, public health insurance system. And what my vice chair was saying is, it doesn't help dealing with a new person every so often. You know, changing health ministers after a couple of months in the midst of a expanded program of healthcare that we are trying to implement. So that's different. But that doesn't take away from the substance of my argument that the Constitution can only be complied with if every level of government observes the functional integrity of the other level of government. And functional integrity, observing functional integrity also means devolving all the resources relating to functions that have been devolved and transferred. We usually have an intergovernmental body under the name of IBEC that brings together, the national and county government to discuss matters, budget, the Intergovernmental Budget and Economic Council. And it's chaired by the Deputy President. That's where we have the preliminary discussions on equitable share. How much should go to counties and how much? In our estimation, for instance, this year we're asking for 536 billion. Treasury is suggesting 405 billion. You can see we are worlds apart.
Just
right?
let me hold on to that bit, because I wanted to come at it from a resource perspective.
Yeah.
Same constitution in black and white provides a minimum threshold of 15% of national revenue to go to counties. That minimum is 15%. For you to do all the devolved functions, you need a lot more than that, right? So then, is it somewhat contradictory to want counties to do all these functions with a minimum of 15? And I know minimum is minimum, but when you're setting a minimum, you're saying this is the bare minimum I can give you to do your functions.
That's a very technical matter that's really misunderstood.
Okay.
Actually, it doesn't say we should get 15% of the shareable revenue. It just sets 15% as a floor, minimum, based on the last audited and approved accounts. But we're actually supposed to get our percentage of what is shareable based on the functions that we have. Right? So when you know that this is what's shareable, you've done your economic projections, you've looked at the taxes that you're going to collect, this is, and the shareable revenue doesn't include, for instance, levies collected directly by the national government for services that they offer. It is direct taxes, indirect taxes, the taxes that Kenyans pay, right? So we're supposed to get 15% of that shareable. This floor of 15% has actually been abused because if you look at it, it says 15% of the last audited and approved accounts. Who audits the accounts?
The Auditor General.
The Auditor General. The Auditor General has actually really tried to improve in terms of playing catch-up with respect to timing of the audits. But who approves?
Parliament.
Parliament. Parliament is it's always 4 years, 5 years in arrears with respect to approval. So the flow itself is being based on something that is not, from our perspective, controllable. It's not in our control. So to look good, to show that we've actually gotten way more than 15%, all you need to do is to delay approving the accounts. Yeah, and that's what's happening. So ideally, what ought to happen is that schedule that Eric read, we're supposed to say how much money is available within our budget for doing all that work, those 14 functions. We're supposed to
Cost them.
And transfer that money
To counties.
to counties. And that's why, in our estimation, it ought to be in the region of, conservatively, 536 billion shillings. But again, we have shot ourselves in the foot by converting every level of government. Not really every level of government, because there are only 2 levels of government. Every elective position, let me say that again. Every elective position has been converted into an executive position. Yes. Because today, the governor is an executive, running a government, implementing programs. And the president, and rightfully so, is the head CEO of the national government. But we've also converted the constituency into an executive level of government in a sense, because CDF and many other things that are done through constituencies, including those markets that we spoke of. The ministries, departments and agencies, MDS or national government, consult MPs, even when they're doing devolved functions. You'll find someone walking into your county with a drilling machine to do a borehole and you're not aware of, and you are the CEO who has the constitutional mandate of drilling boreholes. Right? So we have converted every elective position. The MCS asking for their pound of flesh. They want what is called Ward Development Fund. Right? We have the NGAF, it's called the National Government
Affirmative Action Fund.
And surely, if you have converted the
senators are also now to get a Senate oversight.
The constituency, yes, into a level of government that is implementing. In a sense, that's what we've done. Then our good sisters also have a right to say, what of us? Right?
Women
and the Senate.
Fund.
Right? I also know
Women
saying...
Fund.
Yeah. That's what I'm calling the National Government Affirmative Action. Also saying they also need some funds to manage. I don't think that was the intention of the Constitution.
Are you saying, Governor, that our problem then is political? Because the law does not have all these
It's clear
that we are talking about.
Political. It's political.
And political from a politician's perspective or political from a public perspective?
I think it's both. It's from a public expectation perspective, and it's also from a political perspective. Why do I say it's from a public expectation? Because we're coming from that history where just before devolution, the MP had CDF, and for you to get a classroom or a dispensary, you had to, then get it from the MP. The public still does not reward the Member of Parliament for being a good legislator, a good representative of his constituents, and a good oversight of government, because that's what they're supposed to do. Oversight, representation, and legislation.
Get rewarded for new schools.
Yeah. So they want, projects and physical things that they can attribute to the TMP.
Let's pause it there. Let's take a break and come back and continue exploring this and asking ourselves, so where are we getting value as citizens? Because at the end of the day, it's our ROI, right? Where is the return on investment? And some people have actually even been saying, Governor, maybe we should even reduce this number of counties. 47 is too many. Some of them here are fixers. They say, how many? 14, others have said 8. Let's discuss that after the break. FCPA Ahmed Abdullahi is the governor of Wajir County, and he is currently the chairman of the Council of Governors that brings together all the 47 governors into one council. We are discussing the state of devolution and also the cash crunch or not in the vote functions. We'll be back shortly.
Before the break, I know Eric had asked and made a suggestion about, okay, how are we, if we're looking at fixing it, there seems to be a lot of entanglement, and is it reducing the number of counties?
Before I answer that, Janet, there was two aspects to it that Eric mentioned. One was, is it a political problem or it's a problem of the public? So I had discussed one of the public expectation because, again, this has got to do with the resistance to change. And I said, yes, the national bureaucracy wants to hold on for, relevance. But the public also are not outgrowing the expectation. Probably should have had some shock therapy when this constitution was promulgated. That from today, this is how it's going to be. And probably that didn't happen. So we didn't restructure certain functions and certain organs of the administration in good time. And now we find ourselves in this situation where it's become a political problem. Raila Odinga, I believe, is the moral conscience of Kenya. He can say anything and get away with it. I'm not sure the national government can actually tell MPs it's not your work to do roads. You have no business fixing rural roads. You have no business fixing roads in towns or constructing markets. Because who has the last say in passing the budget? It's Parliament. And usually, with all our arguments and problems with our Senate, the Senate has a softer spot for devolution because they are constitutionally supposed to be the protectors and defenders of devolution. But they can be filibustered by the National Assembly. The National Assembly can refuse to pass, and then it goes into mediation. They frustrate the mediation. So somewhat, you have to appease the National Assembly. And who runs CDF? MPs. This is the crux of the matter. There's the question the Kenyan asked of, before I come to the number of counties, of the counties should also feel the heat. Yes, we do understand that the attempt to raise more taxes and thereby increase the revenue didn't go well with Kenyans and, the Gen Z issue and everything. But the problem happened well before. And this is also, because of our politics and the nature of our political fights, at times the real issues don't come out. One of the biggest contributors to our current financial situation is how we have managed debt since the promulgation of this constitution. From the day Kibaki left office to the day President Ruto took over, how did we manage our debt? Because when you sit there, I sense Mbadi's frustration. I sense, yes, Mbadi's frustration. He's my colleague, he's a professional in my line. I do understand anyone taken to that office will have the same challenges. Why? Because of how we managed our debt. The coming into effect of devolution and the mismanagement of debt were almost concurrent. And we have been raising this because I was in the first council. And actually I was chair of the finance committee in the first council that was chaired by Isaac Ruto. And we raised these things. We said, you are taking too much debt and you're using debt to front load your share. You are taking out your money ahead of time through debt. Because a lot of that debt was for national government functions. It's for mega projects, right? And now the chicken have come home to roost. That's part of the problem. But to answer that, Kenyan, we understand there's a problem. But what we're saying, even within that problem that we have, you're not being fair to us. Because you're also holding back money you have that ought to come to me. So we're not asking for the one they don't have or the one they can't raise. We're asking for the one they have already raised, but they're using to implement our functions through the national government, through MPs, through agencies of the national government. If you have money to do markets, give it to us. Let's be done doing it.
You have been facilitating and allowing the national government to play this game, Governor.
How?
Look,
how have we?
President William Ruto comes into office,
Yes.
and among the many, pledges that he makes to support devolution is to fast track the unbundling of functions. Right?
Yes.
2.5 years down the road, these functions have still not been unbundled. They're still there. It's one of those promises.
Right.
But governors have just been quiet about it. And this is what I mean by that.
Right.
What I mean by that is that so far we have not seen a deliberate effort by governors to actually push for this unbundling of functions. Who has the technical job of unbundling these functions? The Intergovernmental Technical Relations Committee, IGRTC. Yeah, it's a legal entity where governors have a say. But that committee has not been able to unbundle the functions. When they came up to close to bundling it to a point where it was gazetted and the PS for devolution withdrew it. Governors quiet about it. So you're complaining that the national government is performing some of your functions illegally, and you know that they should have been unbundled by now. You keep quiet, you clap for the president when you meet, you appear to be begging him to unbundle those functions. They are your functions.
Eric, that position has been overtaken by events. Just so you know, the actual gazettement now, as you say correctly, it was gazetted and then the decision rescinded, but the re-gazettement happened on the 16th of December. And I can say 95%, save for one or two issues that had, functions that had issues, probably 98% of those were gazetted. You can look for that gazette notice. Okay. On the 16th of December, 2024, when we had summit. Now, the challenge has moved from gazettement. Yes, there have been delays. And this is a technical matter, as you say, with the IGTRC. And we have been raising. It's not that we've been raising. We've not been raising. We have raised it in summit. We've raised it in IBEC. We've raised it on national TV. But the problem now has moved from gazettement to have those actually been fully costed, and has that costing been factored in the CRA proposal of division of revenue? That's what we're now challenging. And that's how we come up with the 536. In our 536, which we're asking for, we have factored in what ought to come to us as a result of those additional functions.
Resources following functions.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Until all that happens, Governor, this is as well as not having unbundled. Gazette notice can be gazette notice on paper. But if we are not discussing from the basis of a 536 or thereabout of 550 billion shillings, we are still having a conversation about 435 billion or 405 billion shillings. It's all moot.
You realize the governors are holding the short end of the stick in this bargain, in the sense that when we come with facts and figures as to how we arrived at our allocation or suggested allocation, where does it move to? It moves to IBEC, we have discussions. But from IBEC, it moves to the houses of Parliament. And unless Parliament, by the way, the National Assembly has already sided with the National Treasury. They've already said 4 or 5.
Hakuna pesa.
Yeah. And they asked us to appear, we appeared, we made our case. And the next day they just said, we agree with Treasury.
You know, I see.
So what is our only hope? Our only hope is Senate to say no, and hopefully, because I don't see us getting 536, frankly. And the ODM party leader has been saying counties must get this year a minimum of 450. CRA has already taken a position of 417. And CRA is supposed to be an independent umpire that is supposed to follow the law strictly. But I can say CRA has also not been the same since Cheserem. I am saying that on national TV.
Since Mika Cheserem, the first chair of CRA, other CRAs have just been...
Yes. Yeah. Because how do you start at 417 when you sat in the meeting where hundreds of additional functions were added on the 16th of December 2024?
I see a problem going beyond all this.
So we have a CRA that is not being fair to, I don't want to use very strong words. You have a parliament that the real power really is with the National Assembly with respect to, filibustering the whole process. And they've already sided with Treasury.
And you have an executive, a national executive.
And we have a national executive.
The president has shown goodwill and said we should phase the allocation, the additional allocation of resources, right? And we've seen when the executive wants something to go through parliament, it goes through parliament.
Right.
So is there a lack of goodwill from the executive?
And
I
think...
was it just for show that he said, you know what, let's phase this additional revenue allocation?
And I think it's good to take us back to, this quagmire we find ourselves in. Is it political or public?
Yes.
Now, when the president says that, which is the parliament that he takes this to pass? The National Assembly. I have told you, we have, whether it's inadvertently or on purpose, converted every elective position into a position of implementation and executive. So you're competing with resources with the National Assembly.
So there's no goodwill.
So
there's a when there's a push to have something pass through the National Assembly from the executive, we've seen it happen. It happens. So why is it different for this?
I think on this one, from where I sit, the National Executive and the National Assembly, for political relevance, have to read from the same side. That's how I see it, because, again, the way we play our politics, the governors probably sometimes could be seen from missing in this political discourse, in a sense, right? In that they don't hog the limelight as much as do the MPs. We find ourselves, we are politicians, but with an executive role where you have something to deliver, you have a bureaucracy to run, so you can't really be out there shouting. In fact, look at it this way. Even when MPs become governors, they kind of disappear from the limelight. I don't know whether you've seen that. Is it the role? So
wanakula pole pole, wanasema pesa itaki kelele.
Don't talk with your mouth full.
Oh wow.
No, it's not that. Even the political parties actually think the MPs are more important to them than governors. In fact, the only time they think we're important is just in the run-up to the election. And that's why, close to the election, every presidential candidate makes promises of how he's going to increase the county's share to 40%, 45%. We've been in this country, you know that, right? Why is it that just before the election, it's very easy for presidential candidates to make promises of how they're going to increase county's share to 45%, and it's such a struggle to get 15% immediately after that?
Because then it tells you that they know that the public sees county and understands county as a place where I'm going to get the services.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
I see a big problem, and the problem stems from we still have an all-powerful president, despite all the efforts that we've made to decentralize power, to devolve power, as Otieno Kajwang said, the late Otieno Kajwang.
I think
we have a president to whom everybody else is beholden. Members of parliament are beholden to the person who is the president. And we also see governors being beholden to the person who is the president or the opposition leader. When the opposition leader and the president shake hands, now governors and everybody else is now beholden to that system. You cannot speak louder when you're in that room, because unajua wewe chama, you answer to me, whether you're a governor or you're an MP.
And remember what we've been told even by the likes of the Laikipia, your proximity determines what the president feels your county and your functions should be. Yeah.
Eric, that's one way of arguing it. Yeah?
What's
that's
the other way?
That's, you see, and you are making it that the president's all too powerful and everyone has to do what he wants to say. For me, I think our problem is systemic, and I will tell you why. We have taken a very robust constitutional model. We actually, in a sense, copy-pasted, right? From democracies that are way ahead of us. They also have their own challenges. I honestly think from where I sit that we went and copy-pasted the American system, right? Where we have 2 levels of government, an executive and a parliament, that, the majority leader thing, the minority leader thing. But our software or our political structure does not really support that kind of system, right? And they are able to handle instability in a different way. For us, our instability emanates from our political structure. We are a very ethnic, patriarchal, majoritarian political system. What do I mean? We elect leaders on the basis of tribes, sub-tribes, clans, and sub-clans. Let's face it. Laced with a little bit of personality cult worship in a sense, right? And that can be very destabilizing for any country. Look at the Gen Z thing, for instance. Might have been very organic, the way it started, right? And the youth were definitely disgruntled with the way we are running our financial systems, our taxes, why, continue overburdening us with more taxes, which, as I said before, also has to do with how we've managed our debt, because to do anything more, we've got to find, first of all, more taxes to pay more debt. And then immediately it becomes tribal, right? Immediately it becomes political. Immediately we have a president giving a press conference to calm the nation, and a deputy president who makes a press conference an hour after he's president, and all manner of accusations of, the system now starts washing its dirty linen in public.
Okay.
Right? So I think there's more to it. I think the president also needs to keep the MPs closer. It's not the other way around. It's not only the MPs who need to be close to the president. It's the MPs, the president also, who needs to keep the MPs.
Well, he does a very good job of that. He actually doesn't keep them closer. He has a tight leash on members of parliament. Let's take a break, though. It's 2 minutes to 8.
Right.
Our guest is Governor for Wajir County and the Chair of the Council of Governors, FCPA, Ahmed Abdullahi. When we come back now, let's go into counties, into devolution. Answer the question, is devolution actually serving us? Corruption, we're seeing a massing of wealth and public looting and all. Does it work? Is it not working? Back shortly. Good morning. Be pointing, talking about devolution and all. Governor, when people hear devolution, they hear corruption. The reports of the EACC, every time they're just talking about the number of counties that are investigating. I'm sure your county is constantly on the list. All 47 counties are on the list of investigation by the EACC. Yours is right now in the latest report is among the counties with a 6.3 billion shilling corruption being investigated.
Where do you get that?
EACC. EACC reports, one. Is this a perception? Or is it truth?
And Eric, and before I answer that, I'll take note of it. I'll answer. I'll give you facts. But there's a question that Janet asked about what Mbadi said with respect to the 47 counties and whether we need all of them. That's a debate we're willing to have. But why he mentioned counties and not constituencies, which are also levels of implementation now, I don't know. I think the problem is bigger than that. As I said, the problem has got to do with the debt management issues that we've had. The problem also got to do with the fact that the national government never shrunk as expected when we gave ourselves 47 county governments. He mentioned that they're paying as much as 800 billion in salaries. If all healthcare workers, or nearly all of them, save for some 5 or 6, national referral hospitals have been devolved. If workers in the agriculture, water, livestock, trade, name it, have all been devolved, why should the national government payroll have burgeoned, expanded in that manner? Right? 2, Eric, you know this. How much is our budget? 4 trillion.
Yes.
Right? 4 trillion.
Don't discount the 200 billion. It's 4.2.
4.2 trillion.
Yes.
4.2 trillion. This year, National Treasury is suggesting they'll give us 405. You asked me to do some division now. Do the division for me now. 405 divided by 4,200.
Oh, yeah.
405, how much is that?
0.096.
So it's 9.6
Times 100.
Times 100. It's 9.6%.
9.64%.
Yes. So what is being suggested we get this year is actually 9.6% of the budget. 9.6% of the budget.
Okay.
Now, the average county spends 50% of its resources to pay salaries. So, what is 50% of that?
50% of 420.
No, of 9.6%. I'm doing this in percentages now.
Okay.
So 9.6 divided by 2
is okay, let me find just
4.8.
4.82.
4.8. 4.8%. So everything else we do, other than salaries, is actually 4.8% of the national budget. About 1% of that goes to the county assemblies.
I'd want to ask.
No. Let me finish this. Okay. There's somewhere I'm headed with this.
All right.
Yeah, me, I'm a guy of numbers.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not a typical politician. I don't know how to talk much. So I want to give my
your numbers. So, okay.
And 4.8
so
minus 1
of the 4.8.
Yes.
So minus 1
is
3.8.
3.8%. So this 3.8% of the national budget is what we have on the executive side of all the 47 counties to do recurrent expenditure and development expenditure. This includes buying medicines, it includes fixing roads, it includes fixing pumps, it includes doing new schools, ECDs, you know, assuming, because it includes also even paying allowances. By the way, the only thing I've taken up there is salaries. So it also includes even operational costs, buying fuel, you know, paying even the VAT on development is all included in this 3.8%. Assuming, and this is a conversation I've had at a very high level, that, you know, in Kenya they say corruption is at 10%, right? Of projects. Assuming even 25% of that is lost to corruption. Let's do the maths.
Divide by 4.
Divide by 4.
0.95.
Which is less than 1%. My argument here is the maximum you can lose through corruption in our counties is actually 1%, if not less.
Of the national budget?
Of the national budget.
1% of 4.2 trillion?
Yes, 1% of 4.2 trillion of the national budget. And I've said 25%, I've said assuming
Okay.
administrative corruption, whatever, at all. But the impression being created, by the way, there's a president who said, we lose 2 billion shillings every day to corruption.
Yes.
Even Badi repeated the same.
Right? There's one who said 30% of Kenya's budget is lost through corruption. Let's even assume 20% of Kenya's budget is lost through corruption. I have proved to you with the numbers here that counties cannot account for more than 1% of that. So where do we get this impression that Kenya is going to collapse because of corruption in counties?
What's your point?
My point is...
I've gotten his point.
Yeah.
Okay, that there's corruption, but not at scale.
It's not. It's at the most. It's 1%.
So corruption
of
at county level is smaller than corruption at national level.
But it's still corruption.
And I want to.
No, I'm not trying to defend corruption.
No.
But the impression being created...
These are
It's
the
magnified.
center of corruption.
That Kenya is going to collapse because of corruption in counties is not true. That's what I'm trying to prove to you. But why is it so? Why is it that people are creating this impression?
But even this 1%, Governor, even this 1% is big numbers.
But that's an assumption. 25. I said 25%. It's not possible to lose 25% of what remains to corruption. But I'm just doing this for argument's sake. It's much less than that. Now, let me tell you. The so-called independent offices and commissions are keeping themselves busy and relevant through us. Actually, they're bullying us because we have, the governor's position or the counties are not very that powerful and that defended the way you think. Frankly, it's much easier to fight the counties than it is to fight the national government. If this is how we share out resources, are we saying, because we've talked about corruption since more years, that with devolution now all the corruption move from up to to the counties?
Governor, when we're speaking percentages, it's really easy to lose track because we get lost in 1% of national revenue, this and that. But let's use actual figures. You said you're a numbers guy. Let's just use national. This is from the Auditor General report. I don't know if she was one of the independent offices you were referring to, but Auditor General reports over the last few years, 2023, 2022, 2023 financial year, for example, she's flagged irregular payments in counties up to 5.6 million shillings, for example, in Kisumu County, unauthorized contributions of 3 million shillings. That is one. Nakuru County, expenditures that were irregular, a totaling of 1.5 billion shillings. Legal fees, for example, were 116 million. Non-compliance for a court case of 98 million. Big numbers. That's 1.5 billion shillings in Nakuru. Trans Nzoia County, about how much? Let me get the correct figures. 136 million shillings in arrears of payments. Payroll anomaly, totaling 103 million shillings. Kilifi County, 177 million shillings of unaccounted for expenditure. Nyamira County, 651 million shillings unexplained fund transfers. Those are hundreds of millions of shillings totaling in the billions. Whether that is 1% of our national revenue or less, it is still a great amount of money. So as we want to ask for counties to get more money, we can't account for what they're doing with the money that they have right now. We can account for it and say that it was all spent properly and say, okay, fine, let's move from our current 15% or less than that, 9.8%.
Let's move from 405
to 538. Yeah.
And Mariam, have you also read the audit reports of the national government?
I know, they're terrible.
Let me tell you something.
Let's not deflect. Let's talk about the counties. Because the national government is a whole other.
Everything you've said there could have been in an audit report. But I can say that's not corruption. Let me give you why.
Okay.
Because I have been an auditor.
Okay.
This is my field. It is normal to question expenditure, and it's normal for the auditee to respond to those things. For instance, now you've raised legal fees. Is it corrupt to pay legal fees? If you're taken to court, you need to defend yourself. Probably you're going to lose more if you don't do that.
You can use that. You could go to unexplained fund transfers of 651 million shillings.
That can be sensationalized, that counties are spending a lot of money on legal fees. The question then is, was it done procedurally? Was it, because you have a panel of lawyers, because you are an entity. The county is an entity, is a legal entity. It can sue and it can be sued. So it's not that everything that's mentioned in there, but the nature of how we carry out our audits also in government. It is also, you know, I think as an auditor I can say we're not being fair to the auditees in the way we carry out our audit. Because a draft audit report will be released. People have tried to extort me using draft audit reports. I tell them, you write whatever you want. I will go and answer when I'm called, because I know how audit works. You will go there with your facts. A lot of the time, by the time...
It's an audit query.
Yeah, it's an audit query. An audit query, by and of itself, does not denote corruption. It's how you then answer the audit query. If there is loss of money, if there is theft, if there's pilferage, then an investigation ought to follow that, and you know, the investigative agencies then do their bit. So whatever you see in the papers, and whatever you see sometimes on TV, even the way we report, even the controllers report, sometimes you hear the controllers report say, County X spent zero money on development. You are in October, the report being discussed is the first quarter. That is July, August, and September. And you received July's money in October. You received July's money after the end of the quarter. And that usually happens in the first quarter, by the way. Because the first quarter, this finalization of this budgeting process usually takes time. So you get the first dime, first shilling, well after the end of the quarter. We are running what is called a cash basis system, where development expenditure or recurrent expenditure is only recognized when it's actually paid out. So you could be building classrooms, incurring development expenditure, but you didn't have the money to pay. But the controller will write, and zero money was spent on development. But the controller will also write in the same report, money was released late. Kenyans and the media will not pick the bit of the controller saying money was released late. They'll say controller has blasted Wajir governor for spending zero on development.
It's not an invalidation of the processes.
If I lived in some utopia where things are done right, then I would look at an audit query and, as you've said, look at it and say that's an audit query. That's a question mark. I live in Kenya though. Whenever I see a flag like that, it's read automatically. If you say unexplained fund transfers, a variance of 651 million shillings noted between reported transfers from the county revenue fund and actual bank statements, that just speaks of corruption.
There are things called reconciliations. You move from one to the other.
You have to understand there's a trust deficit, which is why people have red flags around these. But it sounds like you're almost undermining or invalidating the processes, or you're just trying to...
Honestly, I mean, I'm just
That's
saying...
what it sounds like.
I'm just saying, it's not what you read all the time. You know, if everything, corruption is pervasive in Kenya, right? And there's corruption everywhere. Even this thing we're talking about MPs. By the way, in the US it happens. I lived in the US, so I can tell you this for free. There's something called pork barrel that MPs lobby to support government so that projects can be taken to their districts. These things happen in democracies. But for real corruption, we have to investigate corruption impartially. We have to not politicize it, because also you've seen cases being dropped when regimes change. Yeah, on some things, really, I think we've got to be fair to each other. So for the counties where we think we have been failed, honestly, by the independent offices and commissions, to try to be seen to be doing work. And I'm not saying that there's no corruption in counties. There are as many as 47 counties. The administrations have their own. We even have administrations where this term they're doing things right, and next time they collapse the system. These things are still nascent. They're very young. So the tone at the top is still very important. You know, governors can do more to fight corruption, to strengthen their systems, in spite of everything I've said here. But I feel that the independent officers and commissions are diverting attention to us because they can't bully Big Brother. Yes. So we feel bullied. Honestly.
I feel like you're too many, so it's easier to deal with.
It actually,
this one.
It actually makes a good story to say counties are corrupt.
But they release
and the governors are mercenary
as well on national.
Mariam, let me tell you, I know, I served in the first council. So I have a lot of my friends who are governors who are out there. And they can't even make ends meet. We don't have pension. One of the things we've been saying is, please give governors pension. Why should a governor who've served for 10 years, not even be able to fuel his car? And where did he take all the money you say was corruptly obtained? These are real life stories, Eric, and these are conversations I'm willing to have with you outside there, not on national TV. On
a flats.
So, and it's not the way that it's been put, that all governors are corrupt, all counties are this. And people all didn't come to the platform at the same time. It depends what was this governor doing. If he already had flats before, or if he already had businesses and investments, vis-a-vis if he left, a low-paying government job and whatever, people are all different. But there is mismanagement also. And mismanagement, the governor is running a bureaucracy. Not all governors understand numbers. I struggle myself to keep pace with activity in my county, because we're running a bureaucracy. You have ministers, you have who are called CECs, you have chief officers, right? So we can only fight corruption if we don't politicize it, if we increase individual accountability and responsibility. The governor position is not a very protected position. I usually ask myself, have Kenyans asked why Kawira Mwangaza was impeached before she formed her cabinet? The first impeachment, I'm talking of the first impeachment. She was impeached before she announced her
cabinet.
So we're not insulated against our toxic local politics. You just need to have one rough MP in your county to make life difficult for you.
I think Kenyans are just concerned about service delivery. As
to whether devolution is working.
Yeah.
Let me give you the facts and figures. In 2013, there were less than 800 doctors in county hospitals. Today, we have more than 5,000 doctors in county hospitals. And usually I give the example of my county. We had one doctor, one.
Serving the entire Wajir County.
Yes, Wajir County. My county is 10% of the landmass of Kenya, just so you know. Today, I have 75 doctors in my payroll, including 22 consultants and 16 that are now in school, right? From one doctor to 75. Counties had less than, actually I can say had zero number ECD teachers, because the few ECD teachers there were probably in Mombasa and Nairobi, and they were being paid for by either the parents or the municipality then. Today we have over 45,000 ECD teachers across the 47 counties. From as few as 1,000 extension workers, we have over 8,000 extension workers. From 6,000 nurses, we have over 35,000 nurses. These are facts that you can get. Yeah. So service delivery has expanded. You're asking about service delivery.
Yeah, no, but can we come to, just right, I want us to come to service delivery towards the end, because I know we can speak to legacy. Yes. I just want us to, just before we go to the break, come back to the matter of corruption. I think I'm trying to think about the person who's sitting in a county who's trying to understand why service delivery has either been interrupted or hasn't been forthcoming. Their assumption is that it's corruption. You've broken down and talked about, it's almost like you've broken down corruption heavy, corruption light, corruption where the governor is implicated, corruption where the governor feels bullied. I don't know that the person listening or hearing this has gotten a clear indication of how we can fight corruption in counties. You've broken it down,
yes,
but I don't think you've given a clear answer. How are we going to address corruption in counties?
I think it's two ways. It's both preventive and it's curative. Preventive in the sense that we should not just be trying to hog the national limelight on the front page of the newspaper by calling people corrupt, and then it ends nowhere after a few months. We should actually strengthen institutional controls, processes, right? Train people. And then I also talked about individual accountability. If you can actually prove that I was engaged in corruption, That's a criminality. Take the evidence. But don't just splash and, very sensational headlines on newspapers which go nowhere after a few. Because sometimes some of these things are done. Let me tell you what used to happen, Janet, to me. This is a personal experience. By the way, I'm very much a private sector person. I joined politics from the private sector. In my first term, I was not used to this, really. I will travel out for work. And then some guy, who I know who it is that sent because of politics, will make some accusations and take to the desk, reception desk at EACC. It will be stamped, received. He will bring it to National Media Center. He will take it to KTN, right? I'm given page 3. I used to remember, I don't know why they used to like page 3 of the newspaper. Wajir governor, and accused of the investigation. All he has done is to take some flimsy accusation to the reception desk. How does that deal with corruption? I have never recorded a statement in my 8 years or 9 years of being governor. I have never recorded a statement with EACC. Right. In my term, because there is my term and there's the term that I was out while I was away. In my term, none of my officers has ever been charged in a court of law for corruption. Yet, just now you were telling me how my county was set. I was reading that in whatever. And it doesn't mean that, allegations are not taken against us. There, one guy who didn't find, who didn't get a contract will write an allegation that it was corrupt. But it's up to those investigative agents to now come. And we investigate it every day. When they come, I tell them, please, within an hour, give the documents that have been asked for. So we should be able to separate mismanagement. Sometimes mismanagement happens because probably also the people who've been given positions don't have the capacity, right? The tone at the top is very important. I always say that. And governors should take political responsibility for corruption in their counties. But there should also be individual accountability. If a cashier has stolen money, please don't politicize it. Take that cashier to court.
Okay. Yeah. So what we're saying here is we have over-politicized corruption.
Yes.
And in that way, then we have basically just...
We're losing the fight against corruption because of politics of things.
Too much politics.
And you also see that when politicians disagree. All the things Rigathi Gachagua is telling us now, he should have told us when he was in power. Right? Or he should have left government for that. Yeah, let's be real.
Now he has receipts. Evidence for Kalatas. Let's take a break. We have FCPA Ahmed Abdullahi, the governor for Wajir and chair of the Council of Governors, here with us. One of those functions that is properly devolved is health. And the Nation Health Summit is taking place in Nairobi at the KICC today and tomorrow. We have our very own NTV editor, Zainab Wandati, who's on the ground at KICC. Zainab, the conference begins today. It's taking place today and tomorrow. What should we expect?
Well, a very good morning to you in studio. Yes, we are at the KICC for the Nation Health Summit, and this is the 3rd edition of this summit. We had one last year, we had another one the year before, and this year the focus is on universal health coverage. So I hope when you leave the studio, you'll have time to come by here at the KICC. So the conference is 2 days, a very exciting, jam-packed program, and we're expecting the Health CS Aden Duale to grace this event, as well as the PS for Public Health, Miss Mary Mudhoni, and the chairman for the Council of Governors on the Health Committee will also be here. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at the Daily Nation. Inside the Daily Nation, we have this pull-out, the Healthy Nation pull-out, which will tell you everything you need to know about UHC. And this pull-out is actually setting the context for the conversations we're going to have here. So we'll have conversations about service delivery, quality of care, affordability of the healthcare, as well as why the doctor numbers are very low compared to the populations that they serve, and why some communities have to go really far in order to seek services. So today we expect to have discussions around this, a high-level panel just in the next hour or so, and this conversation will be live on all of our nation media platforms at NTV Kenya, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, as well as X. All of these conversations we'll be having live on all those conversations, but a little later in the day we'll be live on TV as well. So I hope when you leave the studio you'll be able to join us, and this event is open to the public, so anyone can come. We are at the KICC courtyard, and we'll also have some wellness checks by a number of service providers here at the KICC. The services are free, so we hope to see you here. Latif.
Thank you very much, Zainab. And yes, it's open to the public. It's free entry, so we'll all be making our way there. Please make your way there. Have a conversation about universal health coverage and what it will take towards a healthier population, innovation to accelerate achievement of universal health coverage. That's the Nation Health Summit at the KICC today and tomorrow. Time for that break. We'll be back shortly with Governor Ahmed Abdullahi.
Yeah.
So, Governor, then let's just get into that question. In fact, I have another one. Let me just read this question verbatim, you know, how it's been sent to me. And this is with regards to the conversation about 47 counties and whether they are too heavy is a running conversation. My observation is that we did not do the costing of devolved units when we were crafting the new constitution in 2010. As such, we have so many counties that are expensive to run. That's why only around 10 to 15% of all the devolved money goes to development. Why don't we punguza mzigo by reducing the number of counties to only 8 based on the former provinces? Then the governors can allocate money directly to the wards to avoid the notion of discrimination of some counties.
As I said, it's a conversation that Kenyans should have, but I don't believe that's the problem. And I just proved it to you with the numbers here. Those 47 counties get less than 10% of the budget.
Yeah, and 50% of that money goes into salaries. So even if we increased this money, and instead of giving you 405 billion shillings, we gave you 905 billion shillings, 50% of it will go into salaries. You'll just bloat your workforce.
And the salaries to do what? To pay healthcare workers? You know, what Kenyans also don't know, I think the whole question of development versus recurrent has also been politicized. Kenyans have taken development to mean brick and mortar only, right?
Yeah.
But more brick and mortar begets more salaries. What do I mean by that? When you build more hospitals, you need more people to run them. My county today has 178 facilities, of which 174 are licensed. That's data that's online, you can check. In 2013, we had 47. So from 47 to
104 facilities.
278 facilities.
178 facilities.
Yes. These are dispensaries, health centers. We had less than 300 healthcare workers. Today we have more than 1,500. Why? Because we have reduced the distances people used to go to seek healthcare services. Because the more you decentralize these services, and that's what counties are about. Devolution was about taking services closer to the people.
Yep.
So, but our national budget has also increased. How much was our national budget in 2013, and how much is it today? So, as we provide more services, we'll pay more salaries, and salaries and allowances and all those things are necessary to provide those.
Is equal to functions.
Services. So, I think the discussion that we're having, the talk about 47 governors being too onerous on us, is a diversionary discussion. Let's look at it holistically. Do we need, how many MPs are there now? And how many constituencies do we have? 300 and?
We have 290 constituencies.
290. And
plus 47 women reps.
Yes.
Plus 12 nominated.
Why can't we also discuss whether we need that? Right.
I think it's open.
So it's an open discussion. The debate that I'm ready for is, yes, we have now implemented this system, this new constitution for this number of years since it was promulgated and since the first election in 2013. It's time to sit back and review what has worked for us, what has not worked for us, what could be done better. That's a discussion we are willing to have at the Council of Governors. And how honestly and faithfully have we even implemented it? Those are discussions we're willing to
have.
To have.
The 15-year point is a good
Yes.
point of reflection.
Yeah.
I want us to step aside from that just a bit and go into matters, human rights, child protection. Just for some context, in March 2025, a very unfortunate story here of Gala Aden Abdi, who was forcibly taken approximately 150 kilometers from her home village in Wajir County, coerced into marrying a 55-year-old man, endured over 27 days slavery, brutality, assault, and eventually, unfortunately, died. And, you know, body burnt beyond recognition. So it was a very grim story, and I think we covered it here largely. I think there's a huge child protection issue. There's a huge, there she is, the unfortunate deceased that we're talking about. So number one is just to react to where that case even stands as of now, and just how are we protecting our citizens? How are we protecting children in your county?
That was a very unfortunate incident. This young girl was from the refugee camps in Garissa. She was sent pictures of someone. She was told this gentleman is interested in marrying you. She was brought willfully by her parents to where that supposed young man was. And when she came there, she realized it was not the young man, but a 55-year-old man. And she was married off. It didn't work, and it was very brutal. And then this happened. We only just got to know about it after, it was reported. And I have listened to the clips, telephone conversations that she was having with the relatives of that young man, because it was circulating in our local groups, where she was recording, what she was being told. And it's very bizarre, because clearly she was being urged on to stay in the marriage, and she was like, this is not working, this was not what I expected, this is not. And some of the things, I heard in that clip, are not things I can say on air. But it is now under the police and the DPP. People have been arrested, both the husband, quote unquote, and the relatives who arranged everything. So it's a hope and prayer that justice will be done, and that that Gala will get justice, posthumously, and that it will be a deterrent to others. But we have also taken it up, and we just didn't know the case. We have in our health, in our main hospital, a GBV protection ward, really, which is run by our gender department. And if it will have come to our attention and she would have run to us, we would have protected her. But again, given that she was, from the refugee camp, and it was sort of like a marriage, probably then there is grown-ups that didn't think it was going to go that way. But we then need to have a discussion about the whole thing of child marriages and arranged marriages. It's really, really bizarre, and we need to do more. And not only that, Janet, I think we're losing the basics as a country in the attempt to politicize everything. There's a lot of, first of all, our region has a lot of ungoverned spaces, not for anything else, but by virtue of the distances and the vastness of the territory. And this is why it was essential, say, to move from 47 dispensaries to 178 in less than 10 years, because people were doing distances that you can't imagine, 100 kilometers to find a dispensary. Yeah. But we still have a lot of ungoverned spaces. The road network is still not good. There are places that still are not on telephone coverage, even as we speak today. And then there's all these now crimes that happen. Drug trafficking, right? Human trafficking.
Sorry, before you get into that.
Al-Shabaab and all this. So we need to focus more on those things and less on the political noises. We need to secure this country. And we need to understand that this country is one. If you do not secure the borders of Wajir County, then you will have Al-Shabaab attacking Westgate here. It has happened before. right?
From a Wajir leadership perspective, there was silence for several days even after this incident. And I know, like, the question is, where was the leadership? If it's the governor, if it's the woman rep for Wajir, after this happened, they weren't, like, you know, there was a call for immediate action, one, but even immediate acknowledgement.
Right.
And I know sometimes it's a question of culture, but yeah, there's really no room for that.
There was immediate acknowledgement, my sister. If you look at all our social media posts, my spouse, who works very closely with the gender department on child protection on her own, spoke about it. The woman rep came out. But we also sometimes...
Yourself?
Sometimes the first thing I did was to pick up a call and call the county commissioner, call everybody and say, please, before anything else, can you first send your investigators to get those people? So I talk about these things and in every forum. So it's not that we don't speak about these things, it's not that we have not spoken about it.
Is there a program? Because I see here, and in many of our communities, there's that conflict between culture and the law. In very many particular cases, you say, like, just like you said, arranged marriage, child marriage, which is just, it's defilement.
It is, yeah,
right?
child abuse.
Right.
And child abuse. Are there programs, for example, is there a program in your county that seeks to address this issue of when culture and the law are not hand in hand? How do you sensitize the community?
We have a very robust gender department. Actually, if you look at my Department of Education, usually it says Department of Education and, technical training or something. And mine actually says Department of Education, Social Welfare, and Family Affairs. That's the name of my Department of Education. Yes. So we have a whole chief officer for matters social welfare and family affairs. And she's actively involved not only in this case, but in a lot of cases to do with child protection. And we work with all government agencies that are concerned about this. But also, increasingly, we use the religious leaders to talk about these things, to talk about FGM, to talk about all these ills that I speak of, to talk about child molestation. Because we've also even had cases of child sodomy. And all these things are interrelated. These are things that are foreign in our cultural setup. But it's because of drug abuse also in certain instances. There's a lot of drug abuse now. So also, I actually have a task force on drug abuse, right? So because these things are interrelated, the people who do this, some of them, like the sodomy and, rape and things like that, are people who also abuse drugs. In this particular case, it was a lady tricked into an arranged marriage and just didn't work and was forced into it. But how? It's unimaginable. It's unimaginable because these arranged marriages, even when they happen and they don't work, society comes into it. The lady usually goes back to the parents and there's talk between the community. So this also is not part of our culture. Killing a young girl who has been married off, right? And it's known that she was married off to someone, that she gets killed and get burnt and buried. I mean, these are unimaginable. We've never had of an incident like
it's
that.
Reprehensible.
So yeah, because yes, failed marriages, arranged marriages sometimes fail. And sometimes they work, and they work very well,
But in that instance where it's children,
of course,
really
the fact that this lady was not, I have not seen her identification documents or anything, that it's also said that she's 17 years, actually is another case, because then it's actually a child, not and that's against the Kenyan law. But even if it were an adult and it was an arranged marriage and it doesn't work, would this be the results that you expect?
It shouldn't be.
It shouldn't. I think as a country, we don't call these things a national crisis. And I think as long as we don't, we're going to keep finding excuses and patterns, because child abuse, national crisis. Femicide, national crisis. And while I appreciate in some sense that there's offices and departments that deal with it, it doesn't seem like it's prioritized. So even if you are coming out, speaking out of goodwill and saying, you know, I spoke to a county commissioner, I made sure that I get the information, I feel like a lot of the time these cases are treated as other, as opposed to a national conversation on a national crisis. That's just my take. I feel like as long as it's kept as a departmental docket, there's no way it's going to be addressed. And so maybe that's just worth, I'm just saying it as a statement, it's just worth thinking about. It needs to be declared a national crisis. As long as it's not, unfortunately, it's gala, we don't know who it will be next time.
You know, it's a societal crisis, if you ask me, frankly, with all the disappearances of young women who then end up found dumped in, mutilated bodies and all that. This femicide that we have seen in this country. I think it's also a reflection of how many psychopaths we're having out there and the way society is changing. And we just need to, it's again, like I said, about corruption, the measures need to be both preventive and curative, in the sense that we need to sensitize the public. We need to try and change the view of our people, but we also need to deal with these people when something as criminal and as bizarre as this happens, so that people also know that you can get away with this kind of things. So, but I think also it's not only incumbent on government officers to talk about these things. It's about the church, the mosques, the religious leaders, the elders, right?
It's everywhere, at family units.
At family unit level.
Yeah.
As we wrap up, I just have a question. In a culture where leadership is often from a clan level, and the clan sometimes is the holder and the bearer of the culture, even when it's punitive or retrogressive, is there political goodwill to actually end child marriage, gender-based violence, etc.?
I think there is a lot of goodwill, but it's a question of sensitization. Because the age definition of adult is different from the law, with respect to the law and with respect to the culture. For the person out there, that herder, who has very little contact with the urban setup, right? And this is why I say there's still a lot of ungoverned spaces in those places. He probably actually thinks it's okay for a girl to be married over at 15 years, right? Me and you sitting here know that the age of maturity is legally 18 years. So, sorry. So this is where we are. And what we just need to do is to get everybody up to speed to where we are, through education, through sensitization, through telling them what the law is, that, FGM has substantially reduced. Because people now talk openly about it.
FGM. Yeah. I want to ask a question here that is also now still coming and touching on Wajir. Wajir was in the national news for a while when an MCA was missing and abducted.
Right.
And then MCA Yusuf was then found. During that whole period when the MCA was missing, did you have any conversations with the local security agencies, with anybody, just to try and secure the release of a fellow leader in Wajir County?
And very much so. And my efforts are known by everybody. Latif, when something like that happens, there's two types of groups. There are those that will make noises just to try and make political capital out of it. And there'll be those that will actually try and find a solution. The night after he went missing, we went the next day to the police, to the then acting Inspector General of Police, Mesengeli. And I met with Mesengeli and Amin, who is the DCI, and the DIG of police together with another member of parliament, with the relatives of Yusuf, with the Speaker of the county assembly. And we made his case and said, look, this is a leader. He's not going to go anywhere. And we implore you as the security agencies, if he's in your hands, to produce him. If he has done any wrong, to take him through due process, right? I spoke about it in public rallies, and it's available. The clips I can send to you, saying the same thing, you know. But more importantly, we kept engaging national government. And we told them, in fact, my words were, I'll be more worried if he's not in your hands. I'll be more worried if he's not in the hands of the system. I cannot tell you up to today whether he was in there, where he was.
Have you met him since his release?
Yes. In fact, immediately after what happened was that a member of parliament posted that he was found in Uriri. I know that you saw that post. Immediately after.
Yeah.
We hired a plane. I hired a plane. And then we're told, no, it's not true. I met him, I visited him in the hospital. And of course, you probably asking this because he came out saying he thinks that the government had a hand in this.
Yes.
This, and my response was also public. I said, definitely the MCA is not saying the truth about the circumstances of his disappearance. I'm not saying whether he was with the police or because I don't know. But as to what we speculate it had to do with, the people of Wajir know, right? Regardless of who was holding him. But the other bit is, again, the nature of our toxic politics. Someone is trying to make political capital out of that situation.
That would be very unfortunate.
What I have done is because the person who's trying to do this cannot come out to face me because he knows there are libel laws, there's defamation laws. He's trying to take advantage of this traumatized young man. I just said, I'll not say much. I've recorded a statement with the police. And if he doesn't recant and apologize, because everybody, including the rest of the leadership, knows what this is about, then I'll just have to go legal to clear my name.
Governor, we thank you. We've got to end it there. Ahmed Abdullahi is the governor of Wajir County and the chair of the Council of Governors. He's been our guest this morning looking at devolution's dry spell, that's what we're calling it. And he has answered a number of questions. More will continue, but let the debate continue offline. We shall be back shortly after this break.